What I want my generation to understand, and a lot of the media that's really hard on us, they say, Bitcoin's just for hedge fund bros. It's just for the youth to go get bottle service, and it's the Miami yachts. It's not. My generation is struggling. It's not an investment. It's a revolution first. You see, government debt to me is a form of time travel. If we could just print money, why is there such thing as world hunger? Why is there such thing as poverty? Why is there such thing as depression? Who's burdening the cost? But your jobs and your growth and your income is exploding. Is it though? It's the blues' fault, it's the Reds' fault, it's the left's fault, it's the right fault, it's Trump's fault, it's Biden's fault. Is it though? You're literally traveling into the future and spending my resources to go to war, to waste and spend money and grow debt. Hey, my girlfriend told me I shouldn't do this, but I feel like I got to give you guys a little bit of a warning before we get started. This is going to be a bit of a different talk than I usually give, a bit more personal, but just something that I feel like I really need to say. Recently, I would say more broadly in Bitcoin, but specifically for my career, I've spent a lot of time on Wall Street. I've co-founded a new company, it's called 21, and Wall Street and a lot of billionaires and big deals and big business or politicians and presidents and government. But that's not really who I am. I'm part of the youth. I'm not a 60-year-old billionaire. I'm not Jerome Powell, Jamie Dimon, Donald Trump, right? I mean, these older guys that I watch make decisions, and I find it hard to relate to them. And I think that there's a story for my generation and those that are younger than me that isn't necessarily told. And I think that there's a way I want the world to view Bitcoin that isn't necessarily about compound annual growth rate or billions of dollars or getting rich. So I'll start out with chapter 1, some millennials manifesto. So this is a talk about the cost of our inheritance as the youth. This is me. So I'm the founder and CEO of Strike. I'm the founder and CEO of 21. But I'm also young, man. I'm a millennial by like 12 months. And this was me. This is my coding bootcamp graduation. So that's my dad, my stepmom, and I. I was texting my stepmom, and I was like, I'm going to give this really personal talk, and do you have any fun photos? And she said, you should show everyone that you grew up on Bitcoin. So everyone's probably seen like the Andreas Antonopoulos empty rooms of what was it like to be in Bitcoin in 2013. There's a first-person photo. That was me in 2014 listening to Andreas in a room of about 20 people. I'm staring at a massive crowd in Europe right now. This was my first ever Bitcoin keynote. It was in 2015 in a bar. So I'm so blessed, man. I really appreciate you guys so much. But yeah, my first Bitcoin keynote, there were about 4 people in the crowd, and 3 of them were my family. So shout out to that one guy. I don't know where you are. This was Christmas for me and my family in 2013. All of these phones, these are our phones as kids, and those are gift cards we loaded up with Bitcoin. So my dad probably spent generational wealth on some shoes for us. But the point of these slides is, I'm younger than Michael Saylor, man. I'm younger than Jamie Dimon. I'm younger than Jerome Powell. I'm younger than Donald Trump. I grew up as a college dropout that was lucky enough to have access to computers and the internet and, the Western American dream of, optimism and opportunity. And I had access to an iPhone in 2013 with Bitcoin on it. It's not a bad time to be alive. This, though, was also my childhood. This is a chart. This is the number of teenage suicides. If you notice, it goes up as time's gone on. This is the number of adolescent overdose deaths. It's gone up as time has gone on. How many kids out there watching, maybe at home, I'll look at the camera, how many of you guys have had to bury a classmate friend? I have. I see some hands in the crowd. How many of your buddies accidentally took fentanyl and killed themselves? Mine have. I see some hands out in the crowd. All of my friends are in debt, bad debt, trap debt. When we're 18, oh, you want to go learn how to be a teacher? You want to go learn how to be a businessman? You want to go learn how to be an artist? Take on $250,000 of debt to go to Harvard. You want to drive a car? Debt. You want to operate your daily expenses? Debt. You want to own a home? Debt. And so it's weird. You know, my generation, technology, opportunity, you know, we're part of the West, UK, Europe, America. But it just feels like there's something really, really wrong. And I know that my generation feels it. And sometimes when we go and we watch TV and we watch people like Jamie Dimon, it's beyond the point of, you know, making fun of the suits and stuff and wearing a hoodie. It's painful. You know, this headline, why millennials are facing the scariest financial future of any generation since the Great Depression. Since the Great Depression. But think about that. I think if you were to go around and ask kids my age, and I'm looking into the crowd, I see a lot of parents out there. Would you say that your kids think the economy's booming? Are they healthy? Are they happy? Seriously. I know they're not. I gave a version of this talk on Thursday, and I've had people come up to me and, you know, my kid is on antidepressants. I just put them through a divorce, can't find a job. And one of the main messages I want to convey in this talk is, I think it has a large part to do with the money. I really do. And I don't want to just sound crazy, I want to explain it. So I think, how do we get here? How do we get to a society and an economy where 10-year-olds have an iPhone, they have access to AI, but they're also taking pills, and they're also depressed, and their food is poison? Well, I'll take you all the way back to the World Wars. So I'll be brief here with this history, but picture this. 1944, we just got out of the World Wars, right? The world is decimated. There's no winner in a world war. I grew up in American history, so in my history class, they told me America won, but now I'm old enough to know nobody wins. There's no such thing as winning in war. On the back half of all of that, I appreciate that. So on the back half of the world wars, America figured, well, we won. We have the most gold. We have the strongest economy. We have the strongest manufacturing base, and we can help the rest of the world. This was their claim. So what we can do is we can take our currency and peg it to gold. And they established what's called a Bretton Woods agreement. So this is a photo of the actual meeting where everyone, after the war, we're like, all right, we're done killing each other for a second. Everyone get in this hotel and agree that we're all gonna use the dollar because we're strong and you're not. And we're gonna tie it to gold and we're gonna build back better. And that was the agreement. And this was the Bretton Woods agreement. A little bit of history, if you look in the middle there, the conference established the World Bank. They set the gold standard to $35 an ounce, which is a little weird. Can you imagine if they set the Bitcoin price? Wouldn't work, but whatever. They were probably dumber 100 years ago. And, and we went on. a little over 30 years later, the world growing, using the dollar, we're past the world wars, we're bigger, we're better, was the Nixon shock. The US continued about their war path. And we were going to so much war and spending so much money that it was actually France that said, whoa, yo, give me my gold back. I don't want these dollars. You're clearly printing more dollars than you have gold. I want my money back. And the United States said, gotcha. Your gold is my gold now, sucker. Have fun with these pieces of paper. Listen to this.
The third indispensable element in building the new prosperity is closely related to creating new jobs and halting inflation. We must protect the position of the American dollar as a pillar of monetary stability around the world. In the past 7 years, there's been an average of one international monetary crisis every year. Now, who gains from these crises? Not the working man, not the investor, not the real producers of wealth. The gainers are the international money speculators. Because they thrive on crises, they help to create them. In recent weeks, the speculators have been waging an all-out war on the American dollar. The strength of a nation's currency is based on the strength of that nation's economy. And the American economy is by far the strongest in the world. Accordingly, I have directed the Secretary of the Treasury to take the action necessary to defend the dollar against the speculators. I have directed Secretary Connally to suspend temporarily the convertibility of the dollar into gold or other reserve assets, except in amounts and conditions determined to be in the interest of monetary stability and in the best interest of the United States.
So 1971, the US severed their relationship with gold. In 1974, they set up what's called the petrodollar. Petro is short for petroleum, oil, energy, right? So in order to continue to enforce, everyone has to use this piece of paper we print, we set up a relationship with Saudi Arabia, the lowest marginal producer of oil in the world. And we said, here, guys, come here. If you price your oil in dollars, we'll give you a lot of weapons and bombs so that you can go fuck people up. And that's what happened. And so then the dollar was de facto backed by gold, or by oil, through violence. This was the deal. It's so funny. They wear the suits and they look professional and they're just devastating humanity. Then 1981, we have what I call financialization. So to continue to perpetuate this idea that we're just going to print dollars and the rest of the world is going to work hard and sacrifice and exchange their time and effort and energy for a piece of paper that we print, we started to hyper-financialize. Because logically, the system will fall apart unless you regulate banks and institutions to give unlimited loans, unlimited debt, unlimited growth. And so this was Reaganomics. I don't know how many Americans are in here, but this is Ronald Reagan, an old president, who basically just invented all sorts of weird math that doesn't make any sense. This probably looks familiar, like politicians today. But they get out a chart and they point at numbers and you're like, looking at it, you're like, wait a second, that doesn't look right. But he's like, well, if I cut your taxes and I carry the 2 and I put it over here and I move interest rates over there, I'm a genius. And everyone's like, let's go. And the deficits kept growing and the deficits kept growing. Obviously, that debt comes due. And in 2008, we had the great financial crisis. Every single financial institution in the world, and especially on Wall Street, devastated, blown out, destroyed. But we bailed them out. Look at Nancy Pelosi in there. Somehow always relevant. Look at her in the middle of the page. And then today, we're living in what I call the Mag $7, which is, this is the Wall Street Journal. It's the Magnificent Sevens market. The other stocks are just living in it. Because as a youthful person, they say, the economy's booming. You're so lucky to have the stock market. Is it though? I mean, these 7 companies are booming, but the rest of the stock market is shit. And they're like, we're about freedom and prosperity. Are you though? Because this is growth of the US sanctioning countries. So we're gonna print these pieces of paper, force you to use it with violence, and then weaponize your access to it. You're like, well, All the bad things, it's the blues' fault, it's the reds' fault, it's the left's fault, it's the right fault, it's Trump's fault, it's Biden's fault. Is it though? Looks like everyone's doing it. They're like, well, it's all contextual. Yeah. And they say, and they tell us this in school. And they say, well, you got to add context, you know. These numbers make a lot more sense when you realize the size of the economy. Really, though? Because percentage of GDP, we have more debt than we did at World War II. But I just went to school. We're not in war. Well, we always are somehow, but not in a world war. And they say, but your jobs and your growth and your income is exploding. Is it, though? It is on Wall Street, but not for my friends. It's not. And so, chapter 3 is the dilemma we chose. What I don't think people know is we, as in the West and America, we chose this. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't the prior president's fault. We decided this. Does anyone know who this is? This is an economist by the name of Robert Triffin. Does that ring a bell? He came up with this idea called the Triffin dilemma. And it was very simple. A nation who chooses their currency to serve as the global reserve must run persistent deficits, creating tension between, this is the most important part, domestic stability and global demand. If you want to be the world reserve currency, you have to make a choice between global growth and the health of your own people. It's honestly very simple. Think about it. If the whole world needs dollars, and that's the system we designed, we just went through the history, how do they get the dollars? Our job as a country is to just print them and hand them out. So we print and hand out dollars to the rest of the world, and in turn, we get oil, we get energy, we get food, we get iPhones, we get beds, we get everything that we consume. So we don't actually do any proof of work. We don't export anything real. We just print paper and we give it out to the rest of the world, and in return, we get real stuff. Who wins from that system? The world and the elite win, and who loses from that system? You have to understand, there's a cost to everything. There is no free lunch. If we could just print money, why is there such thing as world hunger? Why is there such thing as poverty? Why is there such thing as depression? Who's burdening the cost? So there's a quote from another famous economist in 1994. These are not new ideas. They knew what they were doing. Sir James Goldsmith said, despite an expanding economy, quote unquote, violence increases, the number of those living in poverty grows, and urban slums spread in cities throughout the world. There's a growing realization that something fundamentally has gone wrong, and a pervasive feeling that those in power do not know what should be done. This was 1994. All of the warnings to all of the people making these terrible decisions.
If you could summarize his argument, what would it be?
He said, we are going to hollow out the middle class in the West, and we are going to devastate our culture. All to make
culture?
Money. Yes, our culture. We're going to devastate our culture, and we're going to devastate the quality of the food supply.
He said that?
Yes. So now those are my words of way of saying it. You should watch it. And I think to this day, I think it's the best description. And if you read my online book and you listen to Sir James Goldsmith, what they both describe is the fact we knew what we were. In other words, the leadership knew that this would destroy or devastate the West.
She was a former assistant to the Secretary of Housing in the United States. She was part of the US government. And in the clip, she says quite literally, we knew. In the clip, and I'll post it on Twitter so you guys can see it, she said, We knew we would devastate the middle class. We knew we would poison our food. We knew we were exporting jobs. We knew we were stealing from the youth. We knew. They knew. Henry H. Fowler was the last Secretary of the U.S. Treasury, which is the man in charge of the finances of the U.S. government. He was the last one before we divorced from the gold standard. The last one, 1968. He said, "Providing reserves in exchange for the whole world is too much for one country and one currency to." They knew. They knew. These motherfuckers knew. This wasn't an accident. This was not a mistake. They knew. So let's look at the cost, because I want to be super clear about something and have the back of my generation. We export dollars, but you know what else we export? Our jobs, our health, our stability, and our well-being. The cost of printing money is not paid in dollars. You hear very often that it's like, we have a lot of debt, but we could just print it, right? The cost isn't paid in the pieces of paper they print. You want to know what it's paid in? I'll tell you what it's paid in. It's paid by us, the people in this room, and especially the youth. We've been sold that global reserve status is some form of superpower and that I'm lucky. It's a disease. What about families? How have families performed since 1971? This is child per woman. We're in a population crisis. You see that line? That's when we started printing money. That's weird, isn't it? What about the percentage of children born to unwed women? It's not race specific. This is a global problem. What about the median age people are getting married, creating family, creating bond, growing the world? That's weird, isn't it? What about divorce? Does anyone know what the divorce rate is today as I talk to you? 50%. How many kids out there on YouTube watching this have lived through a painful divorce? I have. You remember that picture I showed you guys of my family? That was my stepmom. I have. How many kids have been through terrible depression because you grow up watching your family erode? I have. What about health? That's weird. As soon as we started printing money, we started printing industrial sludge to put in our gut. Turns out when you print money and you export the very fabric of society and you make everything about the marginal cost to produce things, you disease your food. That's weird. Since 1971, we're eating less beef, eggs, and milk, and we're eating more corn, cooking oils, and rice. That's weird, right? What about obesity? Do you guys know that in the United States, there's a such thing as an obese 2-year-old? What happened in 1971? That's weird. What about the cost it takes to keep us alive? Do you know that the life expectancy in Japan is about 10 to 15 years longer than that of the West? Look at the growth in health expenditures and healthcare versus the growth of the population. We're all sick. We all have metabolic disease. Cancer is growing faster than it ever has before. It seemed to start in 1971. That's weird. What about the housing crisis? That's weird. Housing's getting a lot more expensive, but we're not getting paid anymore. What? That's not what Trump told me. That's weird. This is housing in New York and Boston, and this is how much those people are getting paid. This is how long it took to save for a house before we started printing money. Now it takes a decade. What about inequality? I mean, I don't even know what to say anymore. This is hourly compensation versus net productivity. That's weird. This is the 95th percentile's growth in wealth versus the rest of us. All in 1971. That's weird. The share of young people my age living in their parents' basement is higher today than it was in the Great Depression. I'm going to say that again. There are more people 18 to 29 living in their parents' house because they're depressed and they're jobless and they're in debt than there was during the Great Depression. That's weird. What about families with children that are living in poverty? You see that orange line? That's single mothers in poverty having kids. Why did it start in 1971? That's weird. Do you know what happens when you debase the money and export people's jobs and put them through divorce and put them on antidepressants, and people have to watch their friends commit suicide because no matter how hard they work, it's never enough? They become criminals. Who would have thought? That's weird. This is the growth of inmates, 1971. You see, I hope it's really clear in this keynote that money is power. You understand? Those who control the money control society. They decide who gets to prosper, who gets the big house, who gets to be happy and have family, and who doesn't, who suffers, who's in pain. Permit me to issue and control the money of a nation, and I care not who makes its laws. I don't care about the law system. I don't care about the rule you're about to change. How much money are you printing? That's all that matters. Says Hayek.
Law, language, money, the three paradigms of spontaneously grown institutions. Now, fortunately, law and language have been allowed to develop. Money has originated in original form, but as soon as it was there in its most primitive form, it was frozen. After 200 or 300 years of coins, all governments put their hands and stopped any further developments. Governments said it must not develop any further. We were not allowed to experiment on it. Money hasn't been improved. Money has rather become worse in the course of time. And what we have had since in development are matters of government inventions, mostly wrong, mostly abuses of money.
I have directed Secretary Connally to suspend temporarily the convertibility of the dollar into gold or other reserve assets.
And I have come to the position of asking, has monetary policy ever done any good? I don't think it has. I think it has done only harm. And that's why I am now pleading for what I've called denationalization of money.
The point is this. The three pillars of society have always been law, language, and money. Law and language have been allowed to develop. Money hasn't. Government has controlled money since they started printing money. And the idea of law, language, and money, these are ethical questions. This isn't an economics class. I'm not going to talk to you guys about the compound annual growth rate of Bitcoin and how it's performing versus gold. I'm bringing this back to who should be allowed to speak? Who should be allowed to publish? Who should be allowed to own property? Who should be allowed to defend their property? And ultimately, who should be allowed to issue and control money? You see, growing up as part of the youth, we're tricked into thinking that this is an economic problem or that this is a math problem. This is an ethical problem. Printing money is a moral violation. You see, government debt to me is a form of time travel. You're literally traveling into the future and spending my resources and my kids' resources to go to war, to pass your stupid bill, to waste and spend money and grow debt. You're pulling forward the resources of those that aren't even born yet. You understand that we borrow prosperity from our kids without their consent. You see? Fiat is a moral violation. Not just an economic one, not just a US one versus Russia versus China one, a moral one. Okay, so what do we do about this? How do we solve this problem? We'll get in a little bit of better mood now. We build. You understand that this is really the story of humanity. We're tool builders, right? Isn't that what Steve Jobs said? I think one of the things that really separates us from the high primates is that we're tool builders. We can do this. Because what about the humans that were stuck in the rainy rainforest, cold, hungry, but invented fire? And then what about the ones that had to hunt and gather, and it was kill or be killed, and they invented the spear? And then the ones that wanted to scale society and prosper, and they invented the wheel. And ones that wanted information to be free, and were tired of being oppressed and controlled, so they invented the printing press. And those that wanted there to be energy, shout out Michael Saylor, and invented electricity. And what about those that wanted to create the bicycle for our minds and invented the computer? And then what about those that wanted free speech to be for everyone and accessible to all and invented the internet? And then what about those that wanted moral laws that nobody could break and worked on Bitcoin? What I want my generation to understand, and a lot of the media that's really hard on us, they say, Bitcoin's just for hedge fund bros. It's just for the youth to go get bottle service and party, and it's the Miami yachts. It's not. My generation is struggling a lot. I mean, ask any of the parents in this room. It's probably not going the best. It's probably not perfect. And for me, Bitcoin is about morals. It's moral code. Before it's computer code, before it's an asset, before it's a network, it's moral code. What are Bitcoin's morals? You shall not censor. You shall not inflate. Doesn't matter who you are, doesn't matter how many guns you have, doesn't matter who's the president. This moral code is you shall not inflate. You shall not confiscate. Bitcoin is property, and it's your property. You shall not counterfeit. You shall not steal. You understand? Before Bitcoin's about the best performing asset that Wall Street is falling in love with, it's about ethics. It's about morals. This is the moral code that us humans that have paid the cost of a century of money printing, this is the world that we want to live in. No theft, no inflation, no ability to censor. Everyone is treated equally here. No ability to confiscate and counterfeit, right? Now, the question is, how can we get away with this? And this is another thing I want the youth out there, those of you on YouTube, to really understand. Because we're sold so much bullshit. So much. And so a guy like me sitting up here in a hoodie sounds crazy. But I need you guys to know that Bitcoin finds its strength in its numbers. You understand? both in cryptography, which I'll explain in a second, but also in the fact that we all believe in it, and everyone in this room and everyone around the world that's willing to defend it. This was a tweet of mine from 5 years ago. Someone said, "I'm bullish on Bitcoin, but I'm bearish on Bitcoiners." And I said, Bitcoin without Bitcoiners is simply unused software. Bitcoiners are Bitcoin. The nodes that enforce the consensus rules are operated and defended by humans. If you're bullish Bitcoin, then you're bullish Bitcoiners. Do you understand? Before Bitcoin's an asset, it's a philosophy. Before Bitcoin's a network, it's a movement. Bitcoin is more powerful than war. It's more powerful than government because of math. Sometimes it's really hard to conceptualize numbers. We hear about things like, oh, that guy's a millionaire. Oh, that guy's a billionaire. Oh, the US government has trillions of dollars of debt. Do you guys know how big those numbers are? How big is 1,000,000 seconds? 1,000,000 seconds was about a week and a half ago. Reasonable. 1,000,000,000 seconds was 32 years ago. You see how big that number just got? The difference between 1,000,000 and 1,000,000,000? How long ago do you guys think 1,000,000,000,000 seconds was? We were under ice. Wow. You see, the way Bitcoin works and finds its strength in numbers is we all generate a really big number that no amount of war or guns or money printing or oppression and violence can solve. A number so big that no amount of violence can solve it. Putting a gun to my head can't solve math. Do you know how strong Bitcoin's property rights are? If you wanted to rob my house, you could kill me, and my house will be there for you to take. You wanted to rob my gold, you could kill me, and my gold will be there for you to take. You want to rob my Bitcoin? The only way to guarantee you can't get it is by killing me. It's a number in my head. You see? You know that you can take the energy of 1,000 suns and you still can't crack my private key. Bitcoin's strength comes from numbers. As Julian Assange said, it isn't obvious the universe had to work out this way, but somehow the universe smiles down on encryption. And so how do we, the people, how do we, the youth, engineer a moral code and a moral world for us to get out of the mess that we were born into? We do it peacefully and we do it with math. We find strength in numbers. We find strength in each other. We invert the power balance. I'm sitting up here more powerful than any US politician because I own my own private keys. I run my own node. You understand? Bitcoin's strength is in the numbers behind it. Its true power isn't political or military. It's mathematical. We don't need violence. My message to the youth, you guys, we don't need to protest and go to war. We don't need permission. We don't need to go ask the politician or ask your teacher or ask, you just need a really big number. We don't need political favors. We don't need to lobby anyone and get them to sign our bill. Fuck that. You see, all the things that we use as money today, printed pieces of paper, houses, gold, stock market, there's a lot of violence that goes into defending those. Jason Lowery said, not having to waste human life to defend monetized wealth is worth every watt. It's a peaceful revolution. You guys want to protest? I'll show you how to protest. Buy some Bitcoin. So I'm over time, but this is really my point of this keynote. I just wanted to be really vulnerable. Going on Wall Street and having these meetings and being around really successful older people, it left me with a really weird sense of guilt because I was born with a bunch of peers and we just can feel in our heart it's not fair. It's really hard to relate to Jamie Dimon. The real reason I wear the hoodie, I'm hot, I'm sweating bullets up here. But the real reason I wear the hoodie is because I'm not a boomer billionaire dude. And there's nothing wrong with, boomer billionaire dudes. But that's not me and that's not my generation. And I want to just come out here and be really vulnerable and relatable. And I'm gonna wear the hoodie because there are kids out there that see the guy in the hoodie and they think like that could be me, And there's some hope out there because there are a lot of people out there that are in a lot of struggle and were born with the odds. The odds couldn't be more against them. Like since the Great Depression levels of couldn't be more against them. And so my message to the youth is like, listen guys, after you wipe your last tear, what do you guys want to do here? Since becoming a CEO, the most powerful message I've learned is personal responsibility is how we restore harmony to society. When I became a CEO and people were reliant on me to pay rent and feed their kids, that's when you truly learn, like the buck stops here. And I assume for all the parents out there, that's what happens when you birth your kid. You realize that level of personal responsibility. And so we weren't born into this, we didn't choose this, but we do get to choose what's next. And the buck has to stop somewhere. And so if you don't like Bitcoin or you think it's lame or you don't want to be part of the thing Wall Street is, I hear you. But understand that Bitcoin is just trying to give us a chance. That's the lens I want the CNBCs and the CNNs that accuse us of being Bitcoin bros and highly levered tech junkies. Like, think about a kid like me in a generation that just wants a fighting chance to live life and have family. So this was me. And I tweeted, I don't own any dollars anymore. I still don't. But a lot of people think it's because I bought the bottom, which I did. But I said, I love our country, but I oppose our money. And it was important to take a stance, I really just implore those, hopefully this is just a different keynote, to look at Bitcoin as a moral option, as a way like we invented fire, we invented the printing press, we invented the computer, and we invented this thing that uses math to protect your ability to be happy, to save money, to not live through depression, to have family. And, it's not an investment. It's really not. It becomes one. Don't get me wrong. 50% year-over-year growth for 13 years for me has been lit. Shout out. I'll use the kids' terminology. It's been dope. But it's a revolution first. So the future isn't something that we wait for. It's something that we build. And I'm known as the guy that cried for El Salvador, so I got to watch my emotions here. But I gave a version of this talk on Thursday. And since then, so many parents and people have come up to me and said, like, my wife, this guy was like, man, my wife killed herself. And, my kid has cancer, So I just want, I don't hear this message enough. I don't hear anyone protecting the youth, getting their message out there, preaching Bitcoin as something that isn't just going to outperform like the Mag 7, but it's going to be something that gives us a chance. And it's really unique in that, every single person we orange pill, and every single time one of you does something for yourself with Bitcoin, it benefits the rest of us. Our way out of this is directly correlated to how much of it we do together. So choose ethical money and choose freedom. Thank you, guys.